Welcome everybody to Groundbreak 2021. I'm Jason Cheddar.
And I'm Allison Hart.
And we're here to talk to you about project technology plans. We're coming to you from the Blue Box, the Innovation Center in Morton headquarters in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So let's get started.
Which is totally fitting considering we're talking about technology, right?
That's
Look
right.
at this face.
So I'm Jason Cheddar, and I'm a IT director responsible for our field and emerging technologies here at Mortons.
Often referred to as a propeller head. I am Allison Hart, and I'm the manager of project solutions, but really we are focused on how to help our field with technology now that it is kind of inputted into our business.
We've kind of joked for a while that we didn't know if this Procore Groundbreak conference was a construction conference about software, or is it a software conference about construction? What do you think?
Well, obviously it's a building conference about software, right?
Sure. Okay. All right.
Anyways.
Well, let's get into it.
Let me tell you a little bit about Mortons here. And as you're thinking about technology plans, I think this slide is very fitting. So we are headquartered here in Minneapolis. We have regional offices throughout the country. We have a diverse portfolio of projects that we do, from stadiums to hospitals to wind farms, renewable energy. We are constantly evolving, and because of that, our technology needs are evolving as well. We support over 5,000 team members on a regular basis, and this doesn't even touch upon countless trade partners and design partners who make the success of technology in our projects imperative.
So a little background on the landscape at Morton. So our projects are unique, and Allison talked about the range of projects that we cover. Those projects have different challenges on every job. And whether it's a really complex hospital or it's a wind farm that sprawls for miles and miles, it's not unusual for unique project needs to rely new approaches to getting the project done. Whether it's a new tool for how we track labor, or it's a use of drones for how we track environmental compliance. This culture of innovation that we have here at Morton really enables us to work in different ways. We're not afraid to try new things. And I think we've kind of created a term we've called tri-storming, where our teams are encouraged to try new things, try new approaches, and measure the success of those approaches to get the job done. And a lot of those approaches result in new high-tech solutions for how we deliver the job. And lastly, we have a culture that encourages collaboration. Those highly collaborative teams that work together to get the job done also work together to solve problems when we implement new solutions. So that's created this perfect mix for an environment where new technology comes into the jobs. And I think that we've been pretty early in the adoption of some of these tools, and that's been really exciting for me as an IT person.
So as someone that came up from the project field, how do project teams really view technology? I'm not going to answer that for you. I'd like Jason to.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, from talking to the project teams that I've talked to, I think that the project teams really want things to change, right? That there's way too much paper. There's way too much Excel documents. There's way too much busy work and laptop work that I want to get out into the job site. I want to go out and be part of my team. I want to go check in with my soup and understand what's going on the job, as opposed to sitting at my laptop in the trailer. Because I didn't sign up to sit in the trailer staring at my laptop all day. But I'd love to hear what you think IT people think about this stuff.
Well, I think IT people think that technology is about servers and technology is about enterprise agreements and getting everyone in the company to use the same technology because it's just easier for IT if everyone did things the same. Am I right?
Well, maybe a little bit. But I think there's a lot of other things going on in IT as well, right? There's security, and there's 5,000 people, and we have to do this on over 100 projects every year. So
is this why
can't we do it the same way?
Is this why there's multiple MFA? Is this why I have to get a code sent to my telephone?
You have to sign in a couple of times in order to get access to our stuff. But this stuff is hard, and I think it's hard on both sides. The project teams are struggling with the way that we've always done construction, and the IT teams are struggling with all of the challenges that face IT in a modern IT environment, right? We have people that are everywhere across the company, and that are running around with laptops and iPads, more technology than we've ever had, and it's difficult to support, and we don't have a lot more resources to support it. We've added a lot more people and a lot more laptops and iPads, but not as many IT people as we've added on the project site, or technologies on the project site.
True. And I would say from a project team's perspective, I think we look at technology as cutting edge. What's the new shiny object that's going to help me do my job better? Where the everyday technology, that's table stakes. I should just have access to that. That should just be part of my toolbox, if you will, and should just work on a regular basis. But I'm more looking for what is that new thing that's going to put us above and beyond the rest of my competitors? What's going to differentiate us from the rest of the industry? So I think it's an interesting concept of the two different perspectives of technology, from a field perspective to an IT perspective. But I think there is this opportunity for them to blend into one common goal and one common company strategy.
I like that. I like the diverse perspectives coming together and figuring out how we can build a better project as a result. And we've really leveraged that as we think about our culture internally. Bringing in diverse perspectives is part of what makes us a better builder. So let's talk about how we do that.
The idea of how projects and how IT look at technology today, I think, is far different than it was a decade ago, even 5 years ago. I know just from being up in the job trailer that you don't really know what you're going to run into that morning when you enter the job. You know, your day could be planned to do a couple things, and then all of a sudden it pivots to something totally different. So being able to provide technology that's going to be relevant and add value is very important from my perspective.
So what is project technology? We've talked a lot about all of the different tools and the way that our innovative culture allows us to bring new tools in. But in most cases, IT is thinking about the traditional IT tools that we've had company-wide for a long time. And those tools end up being the big names in the industry and the tools that exist in a lot of IT shops. We've started rolling out iPads, but that really just was a different type of device instead of a laptop. And so I think the challenge that we see is that IT is thinking about all of the big software and hardware purchases that we make in traditional IT context, but that's not everything.
And I think from a project perspective, we really focus on what is that application or that software that's going to allow me to do my job better. We often refer to as butts in a seat. And so sometimes that app can come in and remove that butt from the seat, but not necessarily displace that team member, but put them in a position to do something that's going to provide more value to the project. Something that's going to put them in a position to plan better, to start being more proactive versus reactive on those day-to-day construction problems that happen.
A lot of the tools that we've had on the job sites for a long time have become digital tools, right? So even the surveyor's tools that used to be prisms and walking sticks are now becoming digital tools that our team members are walking around with. And frankly, what we're finding is they could use some IT help. They're asking for some IT help, but we're not set up to support them. And there just isn't enough clarity around how those tools fit into the bigger picture to enable that. Milwaukee tools are coming with chips built into them. We can track them with Bluetooth and things like that. That is an IT problem that we haven't talked about since all of these tools have become digital.
Well, and I think probably the most common technology problem for projects is this sprawl of everyone has their own system and none of these systems quite talk to each other. And as I said previous, it is imperative that we have these partnerships with our trade partners and our design partners. We are the general contractor, and yes, we hold that risk, but really having that united front and that partnership with them so we can all be aligned is great for the overall success of the project. So I think of one project in particular, one of our large arena projects out on the West Coast. We knew going in that we were using a specific software for everyday project needs, RFI submittals. A gazillion of them get produced on a project that size. And we knew our design partner had a different solution in mind as well. It was their company standard. So early on, we engaged IT. Part of my team, part of the IT back of house, we got together and how can we help this project, knowing that this is high risk. This is a high risk project, and can technology solve this problem for us? So we were able to partner together and find a solution that automated that. So it made that butt in the seat that I referred to be able to be out in the field and be more proactive in what's going on in the project versus doing double data entry and all the quality issues that we know that could arise from that.
Well, I think the other thing that we saw in that example was that the turnaround time for those RFIs that the team was waiting for went from a day or at least half a day's worth of delay down into a few minutes. And so the teams were able to collaborate more effectively, work with the designer. Both teams were working off of the same set of facts when they're building the project. And it took risk out of the project. And that's the goal. So when that came forward, it was an opportunity for us to work closer together. But I think the key here is that this is not the end of this. This is just starting, and the technology is everywhere on a job site.
Well, and we know that we face this problem. Every peer that I speak with, they have the same problem of all these different competing softwares and having this common environment where they can all talk to each other.
So what happens if these solutions don't work? I don't think people get too upset if a iPad doesn't work or things like that. But what happens if you purchase an application that is collecting information that you need for compliance reasons, or that's collecting information about your workers as they're coming and going from the job site, and it gets hacked, right? What if all of the information that you put into a tool gets deleted accidentally, or the person that set it up leaves the company and no one has the access anymore? The training alone is a challenge to maintain on some of these projects. And that's where some of the IT experience can help. So setting up extra accounts and managing the vendor relationships so that we're not buying the same software over and over again is an opportunity for us to be smarter and better builders. And so there's an opportunity both in terms of efficiency and productivity and cost savings, but also in terms of risk as we think about this modern cybersecurity world with hacking and data loss and things like that are real risks to projects. We used to worry about things getting spilled on the plan room table and ruining the drawings until the next set arrived. But now this is a real issue where the data could get lost and it's impossible to retrieve.
Well, I think that, and we're all familiar with some of the ad hoc solutions that get created in the field because of frustration and things like that. So I think the days of black ops, of projects not being able to partner with IT because of the belief that it is a roadblock, I think those days are over. And I think we're at a position where it is seen and it is known that IT is a good partner, and they understand the importance of having that right technology in the job site and understanding that those needs early.
And that's a great cultural point, because if the IT team isn't invested in the success of the project, then they could be an obstacle to using the tools that make the project more effective.
Absolutely.
So where does your organization sit? So I think if we look back in our own journey, there was a time where technology really lived in the back office. It was used to cut checks and to make sure the payroll ran, but it wasn't really something that we saw on every job. So as you look over towards the right on this picture, the job site of the future, the modern job site, if you will, is really incorporating tech in every phase of the job, every step along the way. And that's where tech becomes an essential partner for the future. You have to have a technology person involved in helping to make sure that these solutions work. You can't just do it on a part-time, side of the desk type of responsibility for a couple of people on the job and expect it to be successful the way that we expect everything else to work.
I think that partnership and that engagement is really important. And as you said, Jason, I think that early planning, those early discussions are really important, because the idea of mobilizing a project now has this technology component that I think didn't exist years ago. And before it was ordering a dumpster and starting to dig, and now it's this whole animal of technology that needs to be baked into your system in your mobilization plan before you even start building. So
it's crazy for an industry that plans everything that a lot of our job sites don't have a technology plan, right? We just expect it all to work. And that's what we're here to talk about.
So where do you start? So really, I think the best place to start is, where are you at today? Thinking about doing a deep dive of what are your processes, what makes your project more unique than the standard project that your organization runs. And being able to have that discussion and start to catalog everything and understand where you're at is very important. And even just documenting that is a good exercise for the entire project team. Putting everyone's perspective into it, thinking about all the different players, from trade partners to designers, owner needs, the project team holistically, really helps to really understand what is our current state of business problems and where do those gaps lie that we need to either find a technology solution for, or maybe it doesn't even require an app and we think that it is important enough that it still requires that face-to-face manual process, which is fine too. But I think, being able to really understand where you're at, really help understand your project risk, helps you get an idea of your current state of today.
And thinking about it at the company level, right? We spent a significant amount of time last year turning over every rock. We talked to people in every operating group and across the company to understand the tools that they use today for a lot of things that IT has never really cared about. And understanding what those tools are, even if they're just a really awesome spreadsheet, understanding those tools and understanding that current state enabled us to build a toolkit. So we were able to go into the toolkit and start to make recommendations and start to talk about the things that we should all start to use consistently, and getting those teams talking to each other across the groups, across the country, and even finding ways to leverage experiences in our different types of projects where they might also apply elsewhere in the company. So that toolkit really started to come together as we identified best practices across the company, tools that people liked using or were working well, and created instructions for how we would use them on another job.
Well, I think another point to that is there's so much that IT or other components of your organization that we just don't know. So having those projects that have already used it, getting their feedback of this worked, this didn't work, that's important to us to bring to that next project so we can continuously improve as a company.
That's right. And I think the lesson that we found was that there's a lot of discomfort in talking about, here's how I really do this. This is how this really important process actually gets done. But once we got through that, we got some really interesting insights. A lot of Excel. Every one of our jobs has a lot of Excel, and I think everyone else's does too. But starting to create awareness to that, it allowed us to start to look for those prescriptions that we could write.
Well, and I think it's fair to say that, not every project's the same, and so we need to really understand the uniqueness of a project, whether it is something that's contractually baked in, it's a site condition that we just can't, avoid. Identifying those risks and uniqueness up front really help us put that, I like to say the word playbook, but it helps us put that playbook together for technology as it relates to the outcome of the project.
Well, and I think in a recent example, we talked through with a project team about 30 different functions that they needed to address. Everyone needs to build a schedule, right? But what tools are we going to use for the schedule? But that's an easy one. We're oftentimes using the same tools on all of our jobs. But we got down into how are we going to collect imagery for kind of some of our progress tracking and inspections and things like that. Well, it brought up a good discussion with the team. They hadn't really thought of that. They were just going to go buy something when that time came. And getting them to think about those needs up front enabled us to put together the plan. I think about another project where we had some success with drones. And I think the example that the project team shared is they got partway down the path with drones and then realized that they had gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of information that was taking all day to upload. And that collaboration with IT was necessary, and they wish they would have collaborated sooner so that they could have been in front of that as opposed to kind of reacting to it. Getting that collaboration to happen sooner with the project teams and identifying the needs and putting together the plan is going to only work if you are willing to make and able to make, as an IT group, commitments to the project team. You have to have a solution for some of these challenges, and you can't necessarily solve all of them. Sometimes the best answer is to continue to use the spreadsheet. But if there's an opportunity for collaboration, if there's an opportunity to use a different way of approaching it or to bring some IT expertise to make the process better, then be willing to make that commitment and follow through on it. So I think the key here is that this is hard. We've talked a lot about technology on the job site. What is technology? From Procore to access badges to cameras and drones, right? It's everywhere. We've got robotic excavators that are running on a wind job. And the team was able to implement those with very little IT involvement. But sometimes the IT involvement is necessary to figure out a solution like the example you brought up in the West Coast, where we could automate some work and get more of our team's time outside of the trailer, focusing on the project site.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest takeaway is that you will fail and you will learn some things that you didn't want to learn along the way, but that's what only makes it better. I think of us trying to implement some business processes on one of our largest solar projects, and we had no expectation or no understanding of the mass amount of inspections this particular project would take. Not to mention challenges with internet connectivity because you are in the middle of nowhere. But that was a project where we took all the lessons learned from that and didn't make that mistake the next time or self-corrected along the way. But this was a project that accumulated 80,000 inspections, and you have to think of, what did we do before that? Well, before that, we did paper inspections. And so what we did put in place, although had a few bumps along the way, it was a much more improved process than what we were doing before.
And there were a few cases that, talking to the project teams, they talked about things that they were doing that they knew weren't really a great solution and probably wouldn't work long term, but we were able to help them figure out a better way. We did talk quite a bit about speed. And I think one of the things that's been important in order to get the project teams in IT talking is to acknowledge the fact that the project teams live in a different universe, a different timeline than corporate IT does. And it's just been fascinating to see how much having the conversations earlier enables IT to participate in ways that they haven't been able to participate in before. Because they can plan, they can put the pieces in place and make things happen, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all been on that call from a project site needing an app approved right away because they're going to use it tomorrow. Well, hopefully those days are gone when you can start to have those thoughtful conversations early on and start to iron out those details so it isn't that constant fire drill or something that you need to get whitelisted through your IT department.
Well, and I think as the IT guy in the room, I think credibility is hard, right? I don't have a construction background. I'm drinking from the fire hose, if you will, learning about construction. But when we make commitments, we need to assign people to it. We need to make commitments on dates with real outcomes. I think about a project where, we've talked about Wi-Fi in the job, and Wi-Fi is a challenge on every project site because the project site changes. We get it set up, the IT people all leave, and then everything changes, right? The walls go up in a project site, or the equipment moves around, and the Wi-Fi falls apart. So figuring out solutions to keep the team engaged so that the process doesn't break down over time. I think about a case where we had the Wi-Fi access points set up across the job site, and unfortunately, the reality of the job site is they kept getting unplugged, right? Like, the reality of the job site was that the access points would get unplugged, but the team didn't realize that was what was happening. And until we really partnered and maintained that credibility within the relationship and talked about what was happening and what could we do together to fix it, we were stuck, right? It was an embarrassment for both sides. Like, we had this great solution working, and then the next day it would stop.
Well, I think that comment of credibility is important, and I think to comment what you said, I mean, I think that role of IT is so different now. It is like you said, it's not the back of house, it's not the person doing the server. It is that true partnership, and part of that partnership is that early conversation, but that partnership also includes coming back 3 months later and making sure everything is working so that project hasn't derailed. It hasn't gone black ops, and found that ad hoc solution because what we put in place we all thought worked, and then lo and behold, it didn't. So I think when we think about credibility, it is that we are in it with you guys for the long haul. We are checking back to make sure that everything is working as planned. And we're taking all that feedback. And like you said, having that partnership with IT also means that we can take those problems to the app owners and the vendors and talk about continuous improvement and making that improvement within the industry that's going to help us all.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I'd share that we learned was getting leadership on board. It doesn't always go perfect. Like every plan, right? We live in a world and in an industry that things fall apart every day and you don't know what you're going to walk into in the morning. But technology is no different. So getting leadership on board and talking through what's working, sharing those successes, sharing them on your company newsletter or online so that the rest of the organization can see the progress that you're making, but then also discuss the lessons learned, discuss the challenges that you're running into. If we make a bad decision because we thought it was going to work this way and it turns out it didn't, or the team didn't like it, didn't react to it the way that we needed them to, then let's talk about that. This is a learning process, and the plan is a step, but executing and managing and living in that plan over the life of the project is the key.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been a great discussion. I hope you found this valuable. It's a privilege to be here at Groundbreak, and we're proud to be sharing with you in 2021 our concept of project technology plans. Thank you.
Thank you.